U.S. President Joe Biden has met the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, a nation he once pledged to make a pariah over its human rights record. Mr. Biden fist-bumped Mohammed bin Salman as he arrived for talks aimed at repairing the relationship between the two nations. The president has been criticized over the trip after the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi by Saudi agents. While initially there was little friendliness or warmth from Mr. Biden, something he has often shown when meeting other world leaders, their meeting is significant. The U.S.-Saudi relationship faced a serious challenge with the 2018 murder of Jamal Khashoggi, a U.S.-based journalist who wrote for The Washington Post. Crown Prince Mohammed was accused by U.S. intelligence agencies of approving the murder. The prince denied the allegations, and Saudi prosecutors blamed rogue Saudi agents. When he was campaigning for the presidency in 2019, Mr. Biden vowed to make Saudi Arabia the pariah that they are for killing Khashoggi. He also refused to talk with Mohammed bin Salman when he first became president, until now. Mr. Biden has faced a storm of criticism over his decision to visit the kingdom and meet with its de facto leader. It comes at a time of near-record oil prices in the U.S., with the president expected to push Saudi officials to commit to increasing production. The White House has downplayed Mr. Biden's meeting with Prince Mohammed, saying he will also be meeting other Arab leaders when he attends a conference in Jeddah on Saturday. Meanwhile, it has been revealed to the BBC that a Saudi-American businessman in his 70s, whose case has not been disclosed before, has been detained without charge by the Saudi authorities since November. The information came from a member of his family, who requested anonymity. Relatives of those held there often do not make the cases public as they fear the consequences of doing so. The man went missing on his arrival in Saudi Arabia last November. The member of his family believes his detention may be due to social media posts critical of the Saudi authorities. A source at the U.S. State Department told the BBC that the department had no higher priority than protecting U.S. citizens abroad, but that for privacy reasons it would make no further comment. The same forces cooling the national housing market are putting pressure on the country's already tight rental sector, driving rent through the roof in many large cities and complicating the Bank of Canada's efforts to tame inflation, experts tell Global News. Figures released from the Canadian Real Estate Association, CRE, on Friday confirmed what many economists suspected and what market watchers have been saying for months: rising interest rates are dragging the country's ownership market down. June home sales were down 24% year-over-year, CRE said, following a trend that has seen housing activity slow drastically since April. The spring's housing market has marked a drastic shift from the past 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, which saw a flurry of activity driven, in part, by rock-bottom interest rates. Bob Duggan, chief economist at the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corp. (CMHC), tells Global News the low rates helped lower the bar to homeownership and take pressure off the rental market as prospective buyers traded in their apartment leases for mortgages. When interest rates were still low, a lot of the demand was still funneling towards homeownership. And we've really seen that begin to change, Duggan says. Higher interest rates keeping Canadians in the rental market. The Bank of Canada's move to hike its policy rate by a full percentage point on Wednesday saw the benchmark interest rate in the country rise to 2.5%, up from just 0.25% at the start of the year. Higher rates from the central bank lead to higher mortgage payments and make it more difficult for some prospective buyers to qualify for loans. And as rising interest rates have coincided with a slowing in the property market, the rental market has meanwhile seen prices surge. The average rent for all Canadian properties was $1,885 monthly in June, according to Rentals.ca, an increase of 9.5% annually. Prices are rising across the country, but rent appreciation is even higher in major urban centers. In Vancouver last month, rent for an average one-bedroom apartment clocked in at $2,418, up almost 20% year-over-year. The same type of unit in Toronto cost $2,192 a month, up roughly 18.5% from a year ago. Paul Dannison, content director at Rentals.ca, says that with ownership increasingly out of reach for Canadians, the rental market is left to accommodate more and more people. Part of the cause is because as interest rates go up, people are less inclined to move out of the rental market and buy their first home, or they'll wait along the sidelines, he tells Global News. Pressure high on smaller, lower rent units. Higher interest rates are not the only fuel heating up the rental market. Dennison says that at the height of the pandemic, vacancies were relatively high in major urban centers as renters sought more space and moved farther afield. But at the start of this year, demand began to swing in the opposite direction. Now they're coming back. So the smaller properties, the 800 square foot properties in some of the high-rises, the rents are starting to really rise on those. We've seen one-bedrooms go up quite a bit, Dennison says. Canadians moving back to the urban core are not the only source of demand, as a recent influx of immigration is putting more pressure on vacancy rates in big cities, Duggan says. With demand outweighing a limited supply in the rental market, he says his biggest area of concern is in the lower-priced units. Duggan says only a very small sliver of the rental market is affordable to the 20% of Canadians in the bottom quintile of income. As higher-earning households are priced out of the ownership market and hold on to their rental units, the supply of affordable units is increasingly choked off, pushing demand, and therefore rents, higher and higher. While affordability in the ownership market is mainly a pain point for higher-income households, Duggan worries that the surge in rent for low-income Canadians could push the housing system to its breaking point. Affordability in homeownership worries me a little less because homeownership is kind of like a choice. And if you can't afford homeownership, you can fall back on the rental market. If you can't afford the rental market, though, where do you turn? Dennison says that while there's no crystal ball for inflation or other economic forces, he would be surprised to see relief in Canada's tight rental market on the horizon. I think we're in for a little bit more pain. I don't see rental rates going down any time in the near future. The British government is set to hold an emergency response meeting Saturday to plan for record-high temperatures after authorities issued their first-ever red warning for extreme heat early next week. The alert covers large parts of England on Monday and Tuesday when temperatures may reach 40 C for the first time, posing a risk of serious illness and even death among healthy people, the UK Met Office said Friday. The British record is 38.7 C, set in 2019. Rail passengers and users of the London Underground are being advised not to travel on Monday and Tuesday unless it is absolutely necessary. With children and older people considered particularly vulnerable to high temperatures, schools and care homes have been urged to take steps to protect students and older residents. If customers do need to travel, they should check before they travel as we are expecting there to be some impact to tube and rail services as a result of temporary speed restrictions we will need to introduce to keep everyone safe, said Andy Lord, Chief Operating Officer of Transport for London, which runs the capital's transportation system. The alert comes as scientists say climate change is increasing the likelihood of exceptional heat waves in Britain, a country unaccustomed to such temperatures. It added that the death of the 73-year-old on Thursday was accidental. Reports in U.S. media say she died after falling downstairs in her New York City apartment. Ivana Trump, who was born in what was then Czechoslovakia, married the former president in 1977. They divorced 15 years later in 1992. She was a wonderful, beautiful, and amazing woman, who led a great and inspirational life, Mr. Trump said. They had 3 children together, Donald Jr., Ivanka and Eric Trump. Donald and Ivana Trump were notable public figures in New York in the 1980s and 1990s, and their split was the subject of intense public interest. After their separation, Trump went on to launch her own lines of beauty products, clothing and jewelry. She took credit for bringing up their children in her 2017 memoir Raising Trump, saying she made the decisions about their education, activities, travel, childcare, and allowances until college. In the book, she added that her relationship with Mr. Trump had improved since their divorce, and said she spoke to him about once a week. The Trump family lauded her in a statement as a force in business, a world-class athlete, a radiant beauty, and caring mother and friend. Ivana Trump was a survivor. She fled from communism and embraced this country, the statement added. She taught her children about grit and toughness, compassion and determination. Ivanka Trump, who was said to be very close to her mother, said in an Instagram post she was heartbroken. Mom was brilliant, charming, passionate and wickedly funny. She modeled strength, tenacity and determination in her every action. She lived life to the fullest, never foregoing an opportunity to laugh and dance, she wrote. Donald Trump was Ivana's second husband. Her first, Alfred Winkelmeyer, was an Austrian ski instructor and friend who she reportedly married in order to obtain Austrian citizenship. That marriage allowed her to leave Czechoslovakia, her communist home country, without defecting. Thousands of firefighters are battling wildfires in Portugal, Spain and southwestern France, in the grip of a heatwave that shows no sign of easing. In northern Portugal, a pilot died when his waterbombing plane crashed in the Foz Coa area, near the Spanish border. Fires are ravaging areas of France's Gironde region, where more than 12,000 people have been evacuated. In southern Spain, near the Costa del Sol, about 2,300 people had to flee a wildfire spreading in the Mijas Hills. Holidaymakers on the beach in Torremolinos saw big plumes of smoke rising in the hills, where several aircraft were tackling the blaze. Meanwhile, one local resident described the forest fires near France's southwest Atlantic coast as feeling post-apocalyptic. "I've never seen this before," Karen, who lives near Testi de Buc, told news agency AFP. The fire there and another just south of Bordeaux have ravaged nearly 10,000 hectares, 25,000 acres. Some 3,000 firefighters are tackling the blazes. Since Tuesday, temperatures have soared to 47 C in Portugal and above 40 C in Spain, leaving the countryside bone dry and fueling the fires. More than 300 people have died from the heat in both countries, Spain's FA news agency reports. The Portuguese pilot who died was flying solo in a Fireboss amphibious plane. Portugal's fire hotspots are in the north, east of the city of Porto. Fires have destroyed 30,000 hectares, 75,000 acres, of land this year, the largest area since the summer of 2017, when Portugal suffered devastating fires in which some 100 people died. Other parts of the Mediterranean are affected too. In Italy, the government has declared a state of emergency in the desiccated Po Valley. The country's longest river is no more than a trickle in some places. In Greece, firefighters are tackling blazes in the Firenze area, about 50 kilometers, 31 miles, southeast of Athens, and near Rethymno, on the north coast of Crete. 7 villages have been evacuated near Rethymno. In northern Morocco, several villages had to be evacuated as fires swept through the Larachi, Ouatsan, Taza and Titawan provinces. One village was totally destroyed in the Qasr el Kebir area and at least one person died in a blaze. France has also had sweltering heat of about 40 C and expects more next week, with 16 departments on orange alert for severe weather. The head of France's Firefighters Federation has warned of the impact global warming is having on civil protection. It's firefighters, civil security who. Russian long-range cruise missiles killed 3 people in Ukraine's central city of Dnipro when they hit a space rocket plant in a nearby street, local officials say. About 15 people were injured and nearby residential buildings damaged. Dnipro's Yuzhmash plant also builds satellites, with one launched into space by Elon Musk's SpaceX company. Another 2 died when dozens of Russian rockets were fired at Nikopol, south of Dnipro, a regional leader said. The BBC's Joe Inwood in the capital Kyiv says that as Russia's ground offensive in the east has slowed down, there has been an increase in the number of attacks from the air, often hitting city centers. Air raid sirens sounded right across Ukraine last night, he reports. A graphic photo from Dnipro following this morning's attack showed a man lying face down, his head covered in blood. He was said to be a local bus driver who had just finished his shift. Dnipro has taken in many Ukrainians fleeing the fighting further east, in the Donbass, where Russia has concentrated its ground forces. In a Facebook post, Mayor Boris Filatov urged civilians to leave the city. There is no room for women, children and the elderly, and those who can and want to leave, he said. They destroyed the airport several times with missiles, hit all the outskirts of the city, shot at the bridge right in the center, bombed the oil depot and service station, but citizens stubbornly continued to ignore the air raid sirens, he complained. After the tragedies of Kremenchuk and Vinnytsia, I really hoped that at least someone would come to their senses. A Russian cruise missile strike killed at least 23 people and wounded dozens on Thursday in Vinnytsia, Ukrainian officials said. The city lies southwest of Kyiv, even further from the Donbass front line than Dnipro. The Ukrainian military says those missiles were fired by submarines in the Black Sea. Those that struck Dnipro, they said, came from bombers flying over the Caspian Sea. Former NASCAR driver Bobby East was fatally stabbed at a gas station in California last week, and police are still searching for the suspect in his killing. East, a three-time United States Auto Club, USAC, national champion driver in USAC Silver Crown and Midgets, died Wednesday after being stabbed in the chest at a 76 gas station on Westminster Boulevard. In Westminster, California, according to the USAC and police. East was phenomenal in USAC national sprint cars as well, most notably on pavement tracks, the USAC said in a Friday statement. He tallied 15 wins in the series, with the first coming in 2003 at Ohio's Mansfield Motorsports Speedway. He also prevailed at the Milwaukee Mile in 2005 in what remains as the last USAC sprint car race held on a 1-mile track. The Westminster Police Department is searching for suspect Trent William Millsap, who fled the scene before police arrived. Millsap also has an outstanding parole warrant and should be considered armed and dangerous, police said in a statement. Police found East on the ground suffering from a serious chest wound upon arrival and transported him to a nearby trauma center, where he was pronounced dead. East was born in California and later moved to Brownsburg, Indiana, to pursue his racing career, according to USAC. Bobby was an immediate success in his USAC career, the Auto Club said in its press release. His first career triumph with the USAC National Midgets in 2001 at Schererville, Indiana's Iliana Motor Speedway made Bobby the youngest USAC National feature winner ever at the time, at the age of 16. His 3 winning performances in 2001 made him the winningest USAC National Midget rookie in more than a quarter century. Ultimately, he was rewarded as the series Rookie of the Year. A 25-year-old black man killed by Ohio police last month had 46 gunshot wounds or graze injuries on his body, an autopsy report has found. The medical examiner said it was impossible to know which bullet killed Jayland Walker, or how many shots were fired in total. The report comes 2 days after hundreds mourned his death in the city of Akron, which remains on edge. Officials have announced a curfew on Friday night amid near-daily protests. According to the medical examiner, Walker sustained serious injuries to his heart, lungs and arteries in the 27th of June shooting in the city of Akron. He was killed at the end of an attempted traffic stop that began over minor equipment violations and quickly devolved into a roughly 6-minute pursuit. Authorities have said he fired a single shot 40 seconds into the chase. Police body camera footage shows Walker, in a ski mask, jumping out of the moving vehicle from its passenger side and ducking into a parking lot where police opened fire on him from multiple directions. The footage is too blurry to accurately determine what authorities called a threatening gesture he made before he was shot. However, Walker was unarmed at the time and his family, through lawyers, have said there was no need to kill him. Police found an unloaded handgun, 1 clip of ammunition and a wedding band in the driver's seat of his vehicle. Initial findings showed more than 60 wounds on Walker's body. Summit County Medical Examiner Drive Lisa Kohler said it was very possible 1 bullet may have caused multiple entrance wounds. The 8 officers involved in the shooting, 7 of whom are white, and 1 of whom is black, are on paid leave as the state of Ohio investigates. Their local police union has said it believes the officers thought they were at immediate risk of serious harm and acted in line with their training. On Thursday, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, a civil rights organization, made a direct plea to U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, the country's top prosecutor, to open a federal investigation into the incident and hold the officers accountable, to the fullest extent of the law. The prosecution rate for U.S. police officers in fatal shootings remains low, but recent cases have recast the conversation. The Minnesota officer who fatally shot 20-year-old Dante Wright last April. Mexican drugs lord Rafael Caro Quintero, who is on the U.S. Most Wanted list, has been arrested in the western Sinaloa state, the Mexican Navy says. Mr. Quintero, who is accused of kidnapping, torturing and murdering a U.S. drug enforcement agent in 1985, was held in the town of Schwa. The Navy said Mr. Quintero, believed to be 69, was found in bushes by a specially trained dog called Max. The U.S. said it would seek Mr. Quintero's immediate extradition. There is no hiding place for anyone who kidnaps, tortures, and murders American law enforcement. We are deeply grateful to Mexican authorities for their capture and arrest of Rafael Caro Quintero, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland said. Meanwhile, White House senior Latin America advisor Juan Gonzalez wrote in a Twitter post, "This is huge." Mr. Quintero was one of 3 founding members of the powerful Guadalajara cartel. He spent 28 years in jail for the murder of former U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, agent Enrique Camarena. The murder strained U.S.-Mexico ties at the time and was later dramatized in the Netflix series Narcos, Mexico. In 2013, a court in Mexico cut short Mr. Quintero's 40-year sentence and freed him, ruling that he should have been tried in a state rather than a federal court. The ruling was later overturned by the country's Supreme Court, but Mr. Quintero had already gone into hiding. U.S. officials said he quickly returned to drug trafficking, and Washington subsequently offered $20 million, £17 million, for any information leading to his capture. Mr. Quintero's arrest is symbolically important, although he is no longer considered a major figure in international drug trafficking. It is probably one of the most important captures of the last decade in terms of importance to the DEA, said Mike Vigil, the DEA's former chief of international operations, quoted by Reuters. In its statement, the Mexican Navy also said that 14 of its personnel had died after a Black Hawk helicopter crashed in the city of Los Mochis in Sinaloa. An investigation was underway, but there was no indication the crash was related to Mr. Quintero's arrest, the Navy said.
At livestock markets in Turkey, the act of buying the animal is often a ritual on its own. The seller and the buyer lock hands, begin haggling, and loosen their grip only when they have agreed on a price. The handshakes, which range from the vigorous to the downright violent, can last minutes. Wrists are occasionally sprained. Fingers can break. This year, the handshakes have been few and far between. At a market on the outskirts of Gaziantep, a city in Turkey's south, Ali Erturk, a farmer, says he has sold only a quarter of the sheep he brought with him, with only 1 day to go before the start of the holiday. By the same time last year, he had sold all of his animals. Hassan, a local factory worker, walks away with a sheep he has bought for 5,000 lira, that's $290, the equivalent of his monthly wage. Others walk away empty-handed. The animals are the only ones pleased with the outcome. Around the world, people are learning to live with increasing inflation. In Turkey, they are having to cope with the runaway kind and with a government they suspect of massaging the numbers. In late June, a group of researchers put inflation in Turkey at 160%, double the official rate of 79%. A survey showed that 7 out of 10 Turks believed that group's figures rather than the government's. Inflation, along with a rapidly depreciating currency, has ejected many from the middle class. Millions of blue-collar workers, young people, and pensioners have fallen below a poverty line of around $1,200 a month for a family of 4. But soaring prices, combined with low interest rates imposed by Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Turkey's president, have also driven up demand. Turks with money to spare, though dwindling in number, have been splurging on cars, electronics, and other consumer goods. People spend money as soon as possible, says Arda Tunca, an economist, because its value is bound to decrease. That spending spree, plus a record level of exports, helped the economy expand by 7.3% in the first quarter of the year. But very few Turks are feeling the benefit. Over 70% say their economic situation has deteriorated over the past year. Only 10% say that it has improved. Turks tend to rely on foreign currency to protect their purchasing power. The value of dollar deposits in Turkish banks has exceeded the value of lira deposits since 2019. But even the dollar, which has appreciated by nearly 30% against the lira this year, has not been an adequate buffer against the rate of inflation Turkey has seen. As a result, many Turks are pouring their savings into more volatile assets, such as high-risk stocks or cryptocurrencies. Nearly 19% of Internet users in Turkey own cryptocurrency. That is the fifth highest share in the world, according to a report published earlier this year. Wealthier types have also turned to property as a store of value. The result is a bubble. Over the past year, property prices in Turkey have increased by 182% in nominal terms, according to a recent survey. In Istanbul, home to some 16 million people, they have more than tripled. Rents have followed the same pattern. Young people say they cannot afford to live on their own, much less start a family. Turkey saw similar price rises during much of the 1980s and 1990s. But inflation then was easier to cope with, thanks to more predictable policies, including high interest rates. Today, we're like Alice in Wonderland, says Seyfettin Gürsel, another economist. Mr. Erdogan's insistence on low interest rates is forcing his officials to come up with off-the-cuff measures to prop up the currency and fend off inflation. None has worked. Big increases to the minimum wage have shielded workers from the effects of yesterday's inflation, but have become the cause of tomorrow's. With elections set for next year and his political life on the line, Mr. Erdogan is all but certain to ramp up spending. There is only so much he can do. The spike in consumer demand that powered the economy for the first few months of the year has begun to run out of steam. Ordinary Turks are running out of ways to cope with inflation. Their sacrifices are nothing to celebrate.